Is it possible to catch a cold? That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. Actually, to give you a little bit of context, because that's a strange question to ask, isn't it? This episode is going to be about the nature of viral and other types of illnesses. But that question that I asked is going to make a bit of sense as we get into the topic. So I'm guessing most of you know what this is at this point, and no, it doesn't mean I'm pregnant. It's a COVID test. It's a rapid antigen test, and many of us have been using these around the world in recent times. And this vlog is not going to be at all about the politics of a lot of the crazy politics of the recent situation and whether or not this type of test is even all that accurate or anything like that. But I just did one of these rat tests, and so it seemed like a good opportunity to talk about this topic of the nature of viral illnesses. Now I'm doing this because I did have someone ask me about this quite some time ago. They asked me to make a vlog about this, and I just haven't got around to it. I've had a lot of other things going on, and it's been so controversial talking about this virus that has been going around the world lately. And I have talked about it a couple of times, but I haven't got around to addressing this particular topic. And the question more specifically that this person wanted me to answer was about the Chinese medicine view of this kind of virus. And I guess I'll talk about that a little bit in quite general terms, because I think that's all it really needs. But I'll also talk about some related things, because every culture actually had and has some of these same concepts. Now, what's quite remarkable about Chinese medicine and the Chinese culture is just how well developed some of these concepts are. And it gives us a lot of detail, a lot to work with to understand some of these things. So, first, before I get that, a little bit of story time. Well, very short story. I'll tell you why I'm doing this rapid antigen test at the moment. So, a few days ago, I had a friend who had been feeling quite unwell overnight, and then through the morning, and then later on in the day still not feeling well, with some interesting symptoms, a range of unusual symptoms. It didn't seem all that concerning, but enough that he called up a health service to get advice about what he should do about it. And they said, "Oh, come into hospital straight away and don't drive yourself, have someone else drive you." And so I drove him to the hospital, and I was aware that there was some chance that potentially his symptoms, now they were quite unusual, some of the symptoms, but potentially they might have been connected to a case of this virus going around the world. He had tested previously for it just earlier that day, and he hadn't tested positive. But then when he got to the hospital, he tested positive. So as a result of that, of course, I'd spent a fair amount of time in a confined space within a car, driving him down to the hospital. So being responsible, I have been using these rapid antigen tests according to the guidelines. Actually, I did one earlier than I was supposed to, and I'm doing some of these because, again, regardless of your views and the politics around this ridiculous situation recently, I don't want to be spreading it around unnecessarily, getting people sick who don't need to, so why not? I'll do the tests. Anyway, now you'll notice, because this is now, it's about 3 or 4 days later, and this is a negative test. So why? And this is no way saying like, somehow I have some kind of superpowers and I will never ever catch this particular virus or some other virus. Each of us is susceptible in different ways, and I may end up, there's probably a fair chance at some point I'll end up getting this virus, and hopefully it won't be too severe. But it does raise the question of why do some people get infected with a particular virus and others don't? And maybe they have a lot of exposure to it and somehow they still don't get it. And that really goes to the nature of these types of disease. And there's more than one thing at play here. Now, back to my question that I started this vlog with. Is it possible to catch a cold? I remember from back in my youth, quite some years ago at this point, on more than one occasion, several occasions, hearing people who were supposedly health authorities of, one type or another in a position of authority, being interviewed or giving information, about things that were going on to do with health, and giving information along the lines of, and I'm thinking of one in particular, but again, I heard this multiple times, saying that, it's actually impossible to catch cold. Like, really? And their point being that, cold as in temperature, that's not an illness. The illness actually comes from viruses, from bacteria, and so on. And it's like, thanks, Captain Obvious. Thanks, Mrs. Super Literal. That's not that helpful. And I think, I wonder how much damage some of those people, again, people in positions of authority, how much damage they did by not giving enough context to their answers about questions like this. Because yes, we do know that a lot of these illnesses are viral, bacterial, they have these different pathogens that, create the illness. But clearly there are other factors involved as well. With this virus that's currently been going around the world for a couple of years, we know it's seasonal. We know, because we've got pretty good data at this point, we know that more people catch it and they have worse health outcomes during winter than in summer. In summer, less people tend to catch it and it tends to be more mild. It's seasonal. It's associated with, dare I say it, cold. Now that doesn't mean that someone is catching cold, but there's a reason why in our cultures, in our common way of talking about things, we've associated different things with different illnesses that may be circulating. And so this example of cold is a good one. It tends to be seasonal. This current virus is seasonal. Now that doesn't mean you can't get it in summer, you can't get it in other seasons, but it's worse. It's worse in winter. And associated with that is change in temperature, the cold. Other conditions such as the amount of dampness, spending more time indoors rather than outdoors, so you have lower levels of vitamin D, all these things that make it seasonal. So clearly with any of these illnesses, it's not a matter of purely there's a virus, therefore you get sick, right? Or otherwise everyone who's ever exposed to it would get sick. Clearly other factors are also important, including environmental factors. This is a big one because it affects our bodies. Our bodies have to respond to those environmental factors. So our bodies, like when it's physically cold, our body has to work harder to keep warm. So it's putting a lot of effort into that. It doesn't have as much energy to go into other things such as fighting against viruses and things like that. A similar issue can happen when it's too hot. That puts a strain on the body and it's more susceptible to some types of diseases. That's why, there are some diseases that are more common in the tropics. And part of that is because of the prevalence of certain types of, bacteria and pathogens in the tropics too. But part of it is the stress on our bodies. There's other things that put stress on our bodies too. Things like, being stuck indoors a lot, not getting enough exercise, exposure to different types of pollutants and toxins, and these all demand some of the body's resources, some of the body's energy to deal with, and leave the body more prone to infection by these viruses, bacteria, and so on. It's not really rocket science, eh? I mean, this, I guess, now I think it would be, well, it would be even more shocking to hear some health authority saying, what I referred to earlier, saying, oh, you can't catch a cold. We have to be super literal about this, with a straight face, or, without at least some context, I would hope. Because, of course, all of these factors contribute to our body's ability to deal with whatever it's exposed to. If it's already overloaded with other things and it's run down, it's going to have a harder time dealing with those things around it. Because the reality is, these viruses, these bacteria, they're around us all the time. Like, all the time. In fact, many of them are actually inside our bodies all the time. And it's only a matter of when they get out of control that then leads to illness. And so we can look at disease as something purely about dealing with a pathogen, or we can look more broadly and also consider all the other factors that go into essentially our immunity, our ability to deal with those pathogens in a healthy way so that they don't get out of control. So, specifically, how did the Chinese and Chinese medicine view these types of illnesses and viruses? Well, the Chinese were much stronger on dealing with the environmental factors. We're talking going back anciently, right? Dealing with these environmental factors and the overall condition of the body than in specifically identifying pathogens. Now, that wasn't all that different actually from Western medicine back in those times either. The germ theory of disease sort of developed, across large timescales relatively recently, anywhere in the world. And the Chinese were no different, but they were quite sophisticated in looking at how these different external factors and the condition of the body affected the body's ability to resist disease. And so they considered cold, yes, specifically cold. They also considered heat, dryness, wind, all these things, how they affect the body. And in particular, they considered very much the condition of the body, the flow of energy within the body, which has to do with things like the health of the nerves, the health of the organs, the health of the blood flow, and all these different things which contribute to the healthy flow of energy within your body. So they focused much more on that. When there were plagues of different sorts, because there's just dealing with the viruses and bacteria that are around us all the time, and then there's there's a big outbreak of some sort. They tended to look more at changes in the environment in terms of ways to understand why this was happening, why suddenly you had a whole lot of some kind of illness moving through. And, with the current situation, I think you could make a good argument that actually there's a bit to be learnt from considering what's going on in our environment. If you consider, quite broadly, the different things going on in our environment and our society as part of, what's led to this particular extent of spread of a particular type of contagion as well. So, in some ways, the Chinese medicine, the ancient Chinese medicine way of thinking about these illnesses was quite sophisticated, and still really useful, considering all those aspects that contribute to our ability to resist a disease. That's really, really helpful. In other ways, they were missing pieces of the puzzle, or they weren't strong on some pieces of the puzzle, understanding the germ theory of disease and so on. That wasn't a strength. And that's definitely a strength of Western medicine, to be able to identify specific pathogens and that have a role in causing these diseases. And when I say Western medicine, it's really modern Western medicine. Or is it even Western anymore? Because it's pretty universal around the world. Modern medicine. That's a real strength, identifying these specific pathogens. But we tend to not be so good at working with the condition of the body and considering how the environment plays a role as well. it is recognized because, again, it's not rocket science. It's hard to deny when you actually think about it. It's like, oh yeah, those different things happening around me. That really has an effect on your ability to withstand disease. But we, overall, in modern medicine, that's not a strength, and we probably don't consider that enough. And I think we'd do much better at managing our health. Really, if we took the best of both of these things and applied it more comprehensively. So really put a lot of attention on to maintaining our internal conditions, and also considering the external conditions around us and how that's influencing us. And so that we can really maintain our wellness, and then also identifying specific pathogens so we can understand the role they play, and take specific action against those pathogens when we need to. So yeah, that's a little bit of an overview of the nature of viral illnesses from a Chinese medicine perspective. You know, you can go further into it in terms of different viruses having different categorizations in terms of the effect that they have on the body, but that's not really the context that I was wanting to address. So yeah, hopefully that's, well, somewhat interesting, somewhat useful. I did tell this person that I would make a vlog, so I feel good that I finally got around to making a vlog about this topic. And yeah, for a lot of us, in terms of dealing with what's going on around us right now, and maybe other situations in the future, it makes a lot of sense to do things to reduce, manage and reduce your exposure to specific pathogens as much as possible, so that there's less chance of catching something that's contagious. But equally, it's really valuable to put a lot of attention and effort into keeping your own health and well-being up, and considering other aspects in your environment that might be affecting you, might be draining your energy and dragging you down, making you more susceptible. If you do both those things, you're going to have a really good chance of being able to avoid major illness, or if you do happen to contract something contagious, a particular pathogen, of being able to deal with it well and not have the outcome be too harmful for you. So yeah, I guess while we're on that topic, of course, this is Qi Life. I guess just talking about Chinese medicine is on topic. But Qigong is a fantastic tool for maintaining our well-being, our health internally, and for developing awareness. So it's not just about maintaining the health itself, but becoming more aware of what's happening inside us so that we can manage that. We can be more aware when something does start to go off track, and do things to help to improve that. Pretty much any Qigong practice is going to be helpful with that. I'll put a few links in the description area below though. I did make, can't remember if it was a vlog or an article about things that are helpful for specifically this virus that's been going around recently. I'll put a link to that. Long White Cloud Qigong also has a short course. It's just quite a short course on practices specifically for building up your immunity. So that's something that you can do as well as part of maintaining your overall health and well-being. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the vlog. If you did, please like, comment, share, subscribe, all those good things. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.